So now that we aged our face and our neck and our hair a little bit, we are going to talk about aging hands really quickly. So for your hands, if you want something that's truly waterproof, you would really need to use like an alcohol activated paint. And even then, I feel like that's not always going to stand up to soap if you're washing your hands. Or airbrush would probably hold up pretty well. Or you can use cream. And if you use like Kryolan's Dermacolor and you use their waterproof setting powder over it, that might withstand water pretty well. Or you could just use regular cream makeup, really set it with powder and spray it down with setting spray. Personally, I don't really think anything is going to be truly waterproof if you are washing your hands, because you are using soap, and that the oil in that and the degreaser, whatever it is going to kind of cut through it. But as far as just like longevity goes, as long as it's set really, really well, or if it's a waterproof, that's going to be better than say like using powders on your hands. If it's just for like a photo shoot or something quick, you can get away with it, but realistically you're going to want something that's a little bit more intense and going to have a better like longevity or more long wear, whatever the right word is, than like a powder. And even using like a water activated paint, that can work. But since those are water activated, face and body paints might come off more easily than anything else, unless you paint it on with like an eyeliner sealer or like a mixing medium, then it might stay on well. But generally speaking, hands, not always going to stay on the best. If you have 2 shows in a day, you're probably going to have to redo your hands, whereas your face will probably stay on, but your hands, maybe not so much. And make sure to, one thing I didn't talk about, so if you watched my other video, you have to make sure you go back and reset any creams from your stippling. Forgot to mention that. So make sure you do that if you're going to keep this on, talking about things staying on. But your first thing you want to do, so you can either apply all your highlights first or apply your shadows. This probably be a little bit weird because I'm going to like hold up my hand while I do this. But basically anything that pops up, so basically like any of your like kind of like bones, tendons, everything like that. My hands are, you never realize how crooked your hands are until you're like holding them in front of a camera like this. So I'm gonna want like the more prominent parts of my hand. So if you make a fist, it's the things that kind of already stand out. That's what we're gonna want to highlight on, and everything that's kind of in between it, we're gonna put the shadows on. So it'll be a little rough. I might do one eventually where my hand is flat, but just to kind of finish off this look, I wanted to kind of age my hand as well. They recommend putting foundation on your hands. I don't think I've ever done that on somebody, because it's enough if you've already got cream and everything. I usually just do my highlights and shadows. I feel like you blend it enough to where you don't necessarily need it. And also with hands, you don't see, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's like somebody's handing somebody something, or like they're talking like this. It's not the same focus that you're gonna have on somebody's face. So you can put a layer of foundation on. I'm not going to. I'm just gonna go right in with my shadows. So I can use like the same shadows that I was using on my face. So I've still got my little palette of colors. So I'm just gonna mix these up. And so with hands, you really want to be careful because it can really read as them being dirty. So be really careful. So we're just gonna kind of throw in color in between. Yeah, I swear you never really realize how weird your hands look until you're holding them awkwardly in front of your face on camera. And so again, if you kind of make a fist, I can kind of guess what my shading is gonna have to look like. And so usually with hands, I do it really quickly. For most people, hopefully they're gonna be covered up to this for costume. So I don't think I've ever aged somebody's whole arm, but that's probably more like movie level stuff. For theater, I would really hope that they would just put them in a sweater or something so that you didn't have to deal with it. And then with here, I don't know. I feel like with hands, honestly, I think I shade them a little randomly. So kind of like I do, and again, it looks, I think when you're doing your makeup on your hands, it looks super gross as you're doing it, because it just looks dirty, but it ends up being an okay effect. But I can tell you that I probably never spend more than a few minutes shading somebody's hands when I've had to do it for a show. I've never worried about somebody's palm or anything like that. Like sometimes I'll come to the inside of it and maybe make sure that looks okay, but really it's just like the top of the hand that you're gonna be most concerned with. And so we can go in again and kind of blend. And so again, this is not the ideal angle, but I was like, I can do this without having to move my camera at all. Obviously I was probably wrong, but that's okay. And so with this, I'm really focusing on more like just blurring that line out and kind of dragging it back and forth. And so I'm gonna have to turn my hands at some point just to really see what I'm doing, y'all. So I apologize for that. This is all my own kind of poor planning and camera errors here. But yeah, so I sort of just kind of let it like blend out and kind of trail down. But you can see with just like that little bit of shading, that's gonna have it be more in line with my face already. And then realistically, if I had like a sweater that went to here, that already helps it. So like for somebody like me who's paler, maybe I'm just going to shade it. If I only have a couple minutes, for somebody who is deeper, maybe they're just going to highlight it if they only have a few minutes. I think it takes far less on your hand than it does on your face as far as age makeup goes. And so if we want to like intensify, we can. And so you want to get like in between your fingers, and it's kind of like around your knuckles. Sometimes I just kind of go over the entire thing. And then we'll pop it with highlight where needed. And again, so this is just like an eyeshadow brush, but you could easily use a sponge as well. And so I feel like I need, and so I think on your hand it's probably important to try to like use like some purple or something cooler with it so that your hands don't just look like they're dirty. That's really important. So you really want to pay attention to the colors that you're using. But you can see when you put it next to my face that compared to my other hand, because I don't know how to hold my hands, clearly not a hand model, that's just kind of like shiny and bright, whereas like this one is mirroring the same shadows that are on my face. So now I can go back in with my highlight, and we'll just come in with the pure white because my hands are probably even lighter than my face, and pretty much, so if you're not sure, you can go back in and make a fist. And again, for me, it's a lot easier for me to see shadows first. Hands are tricky no matter what, so making a fist definitely can help. And then you'll get way too bright because you're so good at highlighting that it's highlighting everything too well. And then you can highlight your knuckles a little bit. And again, I really never spend very much time working on somebody's hands. And usually until you kind of hold it away, it's hard to even know, especially on your own hands, where you need to be shading and highlighting. And then again, you can just come in and kind of blend that all out. And so on somebody like me who's paler, I want to be careful because I don't want to turn my hands pure white. And so again with this, I feel like as far as like the direction, I'm just kind of pulling it back and forth and like buffing it into the skin. I'm not necessarily like my highlights go one way and my shadows go the other, because I think it's like such a small space that as long as you blend it, that's like the most important thing. But you can kind of see just doing that really helps to kind of like pop those areas out a lot better. And so we're just going to go in and deepen the shadows a little bit. And so again, you could be using alcohol paints, airbrush, whatever it is. Just make sure if it's something that doesn't set on its own, that you really set it. I swear, yeah, you really never realize how weird your hands look until you're doing this. So at this point, I've kind of got like my highlights and shadows where I feel like I need them to be, but now I'm going to add a little bit of stippling, because a lot of times our hands will get a lot of age spots the older we get as well. So I'm going to stipple over my hands the same way I did on my face. So I'll probably stick to using more, as I lost my stipple sponge. One moment. I recommend that you plan your makeup better than I do when I do mine. But you can use that same, I'm going to use that same like fine stipple sponge. If you're really far away, you might want to use like the more coarse one so that you can see it, but I still prefer the fine one and to just put more pressure on if I need to be able to see it better. So I'm just going to take some of my shading color that's left, and then we can kind of do that same color breakup that we had on our face. You just want to be maybe a little bit more careful on the hands, just so that it doesn't read as dirt or anything. It's probably better if you use something that's closer almost to your foundation if you're going to do this, but it's just another way to kind of break up the color. So we can use a little bit of red if we want to. And too, if you were just doing a makeup where somebody had like bruised knuckles or something, you could certainly like stipple the color on with that as well. But this just kind of helps make the skin look a little bit less perfect, because as we get older, kind of all that sun damage is going to start coming through. And you could also like add in like veining, because as we get older, our skin gets a little bit thinner too. So especially on somebody with fair skin like me, you could be able to see my veins even more than you already can. But I think just that little bit of stippling really helps it kind of look a little bit more in line with what the rest of my face is. So you can kind of see if I hold them up. I don't know what's better. I don't know why I thought that would make it better, but I did. You can kind of see the difference. So it's not anything that only took me a couple of minutes. If I would have actually had it together and not been talking and rambling about nothing, it would have been even faster. But you can see that I've got like my nice clean little like youthful hand, but then this one just kind of mirrors the same texture and shading that this side of my face has. So you can kind of see this just kind of completes the look, right? So if this was all covered up and this is what we had, that's going to be a pretty complete age makeup. So yeah, so hopefully this little bit of hand aging makes sense. Again, the further you are, the more intense you'd have to make it, but that's pretty much going to give you the kind of aging that you would need. So we've got our aged hand versus our super youthful hand that doesn't know how to model, and then the aged one. So yeah, hopefully this is a nice little intro into aging your hands.